Let's talk about the real cost of choosing peace over performance, especially as a Black woman in corporate spaces. Because, I've definitely been there where I've been in spaces where I performed, I overachieved, I tried to be the good one, the reliable one, the one who kept everything and everyone together. And for a while, it worked until it didn't. Hey there, I'm Kathleen, and as a transition strategist, I help high-performing women, primarily Black women, navigate life and career transitions with more ease and less chaos by deepening self-trust and realigning with your values. And in this video, I want to talk about part two of my exit story, my exit from corporate. I'll link part one below in the description. Primarily, I want to focus on the cost of choosing peace over performance, the cost of being your authentic self, especially as a Black woman in corporate spaces. So first, I want to share a little bit more of my story. You may or may not know, if you've been here a while, that I experienced 4 periods of unemployment in a 5-year time frame. And my longest period of unemployment was a full year. That was after I was laid off in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I worked at a company that serviced events and people who put on meetings, events, conferences, primarily in corporate spaces. And so obviously with the pandemic, that pretty much wiped out the meetings, events, conferences, in-person experience, that whole industry. It pretty much wiped it out seemingly overnight. And that was the first time that I left a job and the way that I left wasn't on my own terms. My exit wasn't on my own terms. Now, truth be told, I already had one foot out the door at that company. I had known for a few months that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be or, what I hoped to gain from that experience. I could tell pretty quickly that, it wasn't what I needed at that stage in my career. So I had been looking for a job for a few months, but I was laid off and I did not see that coming. I didn't expect it. And being laid off and losing my job for something outside of my control, it made me reevaluate how I look at job security. Basically, that's at that point I realized job security is not a thing. I no longer believed in the idea of job security because the truth is these companies don't care. They don't. It's really about the bottom line. And so when I started looking for a new job, I decided I'm going to align my values with, I'm going to look for jobs and opportunities that align with my values. This was probably the first time in my career that I was really or trying to align my values and with my job and all of those things instead of chasing, money or a title or even a specific company name. And one of my values is authenticity. I needed to work somewhere where I could be more of myself, where I didn't have to, put on a mask every day just to survive. Now, one thing I do want to be clear about is that in my corporate career, I never brought my full self to work. Even when I decided that I wanted to and needed to be my most authentic self, that doesn't mean that I brought my full self to work because I don't think being authentic means that you don't have boundaries. I don't think being authentic means that you have to show every part of yourself in every setting. I think being authentic means being as real, being yourself, being real about who you are and what that looks like in different spaces might be different, right? You can have different definitions or versions of your authentic self in different settings. And so for me, I was tired of code switching. I was tired of shrinking to make other people feel more comfortable. I was tired of performing. I wanted to show up as myself as much as I felt safe to do so in a corporate setting. And I'll never forget what my life coach at the time asked me when I told her like that's what I wanted in my next role. She asked me, well, what does authenticity even look like for you, especially as a Black woman in these corporate environments? Because like for her, she was self-employed, had her own business, and she had been removed from traditional jobs for a while. So she challenged me to define what I mean by being authentic in these spaces. And that was the point I was making, where being authentic in certain spaces might look different than in another space. But when she asked me that question, that's when I really started to think about what does authenticity or being authentic look like for me in the workplace. And so, like I said, it was not code switching, so not softening my voice to sound more palatable. It's speaking with not the full bass in my voice, but my voice is a deeper register than white women. And instead of code switching, I spoke at my regular voice. It looked like being authentic looks like saying no without an explanation. Now, I will say in a lot of settings, in a lot of corporate settings, people don't like to hear the word no. So it's about figuring out and learning how to say no without saying the word no. It can be done. But instead of being so quick to agree to things or raise my hand for things, I learned to say no without an explanation. Being authentic for me meant pushing back in a respectful way, even if that meant that I disagreed with what everybody else was saying, even if I was the only person who spoke up about something that I disagreed with. I didn't just go along with everybody just because everybody went along with it. I would offer different perspectives, where in the past I wouldn't always do that. And really, this is where I started choosing peace over performing, over, this is where I became more comfortable, or for lack of a better word, comfortable with people not necessarily liking me. I no longer cared about being liked. I cared about being respected for who I am, but I no longer cared about being liked. But what I didn't know then, when I decided that it was important for me to be authentic in the workplace, and what I don't think a lot of people talk about, or at least I didn't hear anyone talk about it, is that what happens when you start choosing peace, it comes with its own costs. And I think that we need to talk about that because I had no idea how being authentic and being authentic in certain environments can be considered disruptive. So here's what started happening when I started choosing peace over performance in the workplace and showed up as my authentic self. And I wrote them down so that I wouldn't forget. So, first thing, and I kind of mentioned this already, but more people did not like me, and it was obvious. Now, like I said, when I decided to be more of my authentic self in the workplace, where decided that I needed to be more of my authentic self in the workplace and not have to put on a mask, I built up a tolerance or a capacity for not being liked. I wanted to be respected more than I cared about being liked. And there's something about being real that makes people uncomfortable. When you're not performing or you're not pretending or you don't care about being liked, it shows, right? Like for some people who are putting on a mask or who are performing or who are pretending, when they come across somebody who's being authentic, who is more of themselves, it feels threatening because it's like, oh, well, why can they be themselves and I can't? Or, oh, who does she think she is? She can just come in here and be herself. Like, who does she think she is? It's a projection of who does she think she is. And what they don't know, first of all, they don't know that, like, well, you can also be authentic. You also don't have to put on a mask, right? And a lot of people don't know what to do with somebody who's just grounded. They don't know how to interact with somebody who isn't trying to, isn't trying to be impressive. They might just be impressive. Just their existence is impressive. They don't have to try. And so, like I said, people project that onto you. They'll like they'll misunderstand you purposely. They'll talk about you. They'll label you as difficult or intimidating, all because you were not playing a role that they felt comfortable with, or all because you didn't show up in the way that they, expected you to show up based on their limited worldview. Another thing that started happening is that people started testing me and my limits. It's almost like they saw my peace as a challenge of, oh, okay, you can't really be that peaceful. You can't really be that at peace. Let's bring some chaos into your life and see how you respond to that. Like they couldn't, the more I stayed unbothered, it bothered people, especially in the workplace. And I'm speaking specifically to the workplace. I'm not talking about in my personal life, because in my personal life, this is a problem. This is not a problem. In the workplace, it was. Being unbothered in the workplace, apparently that's a problem. And so some people would try to go out of their way to see if they could bother me. There'd be like little jabs or just passive aggressiveness on 10 or, just that nice nasty attitude. You know what I'm talking about. And if I didn't react or respond, it like made it worse. It was like a game that they were trying to play. And I'm like, don't you have work to do? Don't you have work to do? Why are you bothering me? But peace, like real peace, it makes people who feed off of control or chaos, it triggers them. And when you do, because we're human. I'm human. I have a breaking point. I have a limit. There's only so much you can jab before I do respond. But then when you do respond, now suddenly you're the problem. Suddenly it's like, oh, they actually like, oh, I don't understand what we're talking about. So that started happening a lot. And then another thing that happened when I started being more of my authentic self and stopped performing and choosing peace in the workplace is that my tolerance for stupidity basically what was out the window. And I don't mean that in like a petty way. I mean the tolerance for things that that didn't make sense. Where let's be real, a lot of things in most corporate environments don't make sense. Most meetings can be an email. Most meetings don't actually solve problems, they create more problems. It's just an opportunity for people to be performative, for people to, talk, just to be seen, just to I don't know, feel important. I don't know. Or some people have meetings because they think you're supposed to have meetings. And it's like, you don't have to have meetings. It can be an email, it can be a Slack. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent. Let me start to live back. So my tolerance for, just things that didn't make sense, I just didn't have the tolerance for it anymore. But I also didn't have the like energy is probably the best word. I didn't have the energy to like argue. So if you were going to argue with me or in the workplace, if it became clear when people just wanted to be right. I don't care about being right. I don't need to be right. I'm probably wrong most of the time and I'm okay with that. But people who want to be right, if you said 2 plus 2 is 8, you're right. 2 plus 2 is 8. That's fine. Because I didn't have the energy to go back and forth with you to say, no, actually 2 plus 2 is 4. And here's why I wasn't doing that. You're right. 2 plus 2 is 8. I just didn't have the energy anymore. And I'll be honest, I think me being my authentic self and choosing peace over performance, over chaos, I do believe that that is why I lost my last job. It wasn't because I wasn't doing the work, because I was. It wasn't because I wasn't qualified. I absolutely was. It was because I stopped shrinking. I stopped over explaining. I stopped pretending. And that made some people uncomfortable. I'm sorry, that made some people uncomfortable, allegedly. That is just my experience. That is, if you ask me, that is what I believe to be a factor in why I lost my last job. Being yourself, being at peace, being authentic, and not, you know, putting yourself in the box that other people create for you, it makes people uncomfortable. That is a cost of peace. So do I think that you can be authentic in the workplace, especially as a Black woman? Well, first, it depends on how you define authenticity, what that looks like for you. Because remember, authenticity and being authentic, that looks different for everyone. And the same question that my life coach asked me years ago is the same question I would have you ask yourself of what does authenticity look like for you, especially in the workplace, especially if you might be the only Black woman on your team or in your department or even at your whole company, depending on the size, right? What does authenticity look like for you? But do I think that Black women can be authentic in the workplace and thrive? My opinion is that you can be authentic and thrive in the workplace only if you have a manager who is secure in themselves, secure in their work, who is not threatened by you, and who is an advocate and a champion for you. Because if your manager is not those things, if they are insecure or if, they feel threatened by you and your existence, it's easier for them to label you as the problem and say that you're not a team player or you're not performing or, whatever else. It's easier to do that than to acknowledge the ways that, the system is built to silence many people. And so, yeah, if they're not secure in themselves, then no, I don't think that you can be authentic and thrive. Because like I said, I truly believe that my authenticity is what cost me my last job or was definitely a factor. I think in some environments, not conforming to how they want you to be puts a target on your back. And mind you, obviously, there's unspoken rules of corporate, right? 100% there are unspoken rules of corporate, but I think there is a very fine line between those unspoken rules and doing what you need to do in certain corporate environments or certain corporate cultures versus somebody wanting you to be somebody who you're not. So that's the difference. It's you can still be your authentic self and navigate corporate environments, but it's when you being you threatens people who don't want you to be you because they know your greatness. That's really what it is. People are threatened by people who are authentic, who are themselves because they know your greatness. Even if you don't see your own greatness, they know it. And that's what threatens them. But the thing is, I keep talking about the cost of choosing peace. It's a cost that I would not trade at all. The cost of performing versus choosing peace, I'll choose the cost of peace any other day. So, like I said, this is part two of my exit story. Part one is in the description box below. And I've decided that I want to document or share more of my story since leaving corporate. I thought that I needed to share more of my corporate experience in order for people to really understand the work that I do. But I really want to share more about my journey since leaving, since starting my business and the journey that entrepreneurship has been. And maybe it will help you if you're thinking about starting your own business or if you already have a business on the side that you're thinking about going into full time. Here, I'm going to start sharing some things that I wish someone had told me. Some things that I wish that I had heard when I was in the beginning stages. I mean, I'm still kind of in the beginning stages. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss those videos as they come out. And thank you for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful.